Welcome, everybody, to the March 2026 session of LEAP. I'm going to be sharing with you a presentation I did at the recent Trib Group Meeting of the Minds show called Reducing Churn, How to Keep More Customers. My name is Dan Fisher. This is my contact information. As we're going through this session, if you come up with any questions, comments, anything you'd like to share with me or ask me, please feel free to reach out. Love hearing from people anytime. To start with, I guess the question I would have for you is, if you had a store, that whether you're the manager, whether you're an owner, do you have any stores or a store that you wish could do more sales? I think most of us would say yes, right? Whether it's $1 million store that we're trying to get to 1.5 million, or $1.5 million store we're trying to get to a $2 million store, or so on and so on. We could always use more sales. We could always use more sales volume. Sometimes I have managers come to me and they might be running a good store, maybe let's call it a $1.5 million store, and they say to me, you know what? I'm ready for more. I want to move to a bigger store. And my question usually starts with, why not grow the store that you have? If you're ready for more, let's talk about growing the store that you have. And of course, the question comes about, well, is it even possible? Is this store maxed out? Is this as big as it can get? And again, this session was originally interactive with the group at the Trib Meeting in the Mind show. So I'm going to keep those slides in. And just in case you want to share this with your teams at home or anything, just to kind of give you an idea of how it played out. And so, at the time I said, well, what are some reasons we tell ourselves that a store has maxed out its potential? And I'm sure you've all heard some of these excuses. Hey, this is just a small town. It's pretty much, at the size it is, and that's about as big as it's going to get. Location, we're not in the best of centers. We're a little bit off the beaten path. We're not in a Walmart center, so we really can't grow it. Or, our town is really hit rough by this economy. We just, our people don't have any money to spend. People in this town don't believe in rent to own. And there's probably some other reasons that you mentioned when you were talking about what reasons your store might not be able to grow to a larger store. And one of my favorite quotes is by Henry Ford, and it's the one you see on the screen here. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I think this is just so true in so many contexts. And the one I'll use here is if I think this town is too small to achieve a $2 million store, guess what? I'm right. I'm never going to grow a $2 million store here. But someone else might say, I bet I can grow a $3 million store in this town. And that person is absolutely right. She can definitely grow a $3 million store here because the first component of that is just believing that you can do it. One person might say, if I believe that the people in my town just don't believe in rent to own, and because of that, I can't possibly grow a $2 million store here, then I'm right. I'm not going to grow a $2 million store here. But someone else might be thinking to themselves, I'm going to win the people of this town over to the rent to own mindset. I'm going to let them know what it is that we offer. And by doing that, I'm going to grow a $3 million store in this town. And he's absolutely right. He can grow a $3 million store here. Here's a real life example from Magic Rent to Own in Sunbury, PA. So we had a very small store in a town of about 7,000 people, I believe it is, Sunbury, PA. We bought this store, and the store manager had been there for ages, and he was pretty fixated on the fact that $450,000 was pretty much the max that this little town of Sunbury is going to be able to do for us. Well, over time, we had a new employee who came on board. His name was Raymond. He was actually at the Trib show with us, and he got promoted to that store manager role. The other person had left. And the difference between Raymond and the previous manager was Raymond believed that he could grow this store. And over his first 5 years as manager, every single year that store grew between 25 and 35% in bottom line sales because he believed he could do it and he did what it took to do it. It's not as simple as just believing you can do it, but if you don't believe you can do it, you definitely aren't going to do it. If you believe you can do it and you're willing to work your butt off to do it, like as Raymond did, then you're going to have a lot of success. So over the next 5 years, he grew at 25 to 35% per year. and then continued growing after that to the point where this past year, 2025, Raymond was just, I think, a few $1,000s short of a $2 million store in this small town of Sunbury, Pennsylvania. So, what was the primary difference between Raymond and his predecessor? As I said, Raymond believed, his predecessor didn't. And as I said, there's a lot more to it than just believing, but if you don't believe, it's not going to happen. We're going to come back to this mindset in a minute, but let's assume that you want to grow a store from $1 million to $2 million over the next few years. When you think about the most obvious way to do this, how would you go about it? I think most of us are going to answer the same answer. I'm going to sell more. What's the second thing? I'm going to sell even more. Third thing, I'm going to sell even some more. I'm going to keep selling better and better than the other guys, better than my competition. And so that's great. And that's 100% true. Sales definitely leads to growth, no doubt. We have to be good at selling. We all have to do better at selling. But again, this particular breakout was not about selling. We're here, how do we keep the customers we have? So we're here to talk about how do we keep the customers we have. And the opposite of keeping them is driving them away, right? Or losing them. So what is it that we do to drive our customers away? And again, in the breakout, I had small groups break out for a couple of minutes and list a list of three things that they feel that we do in our stores that probably drives them to our competitors or a more traditional retailer. And so we wrote them down, and then we're going to address those in a minute. But I want to get back to mindset. I believe that customer retention, in other words, keeping customers, has a lot to do with how we feel about our customers and what we believe of them. Do we think that we're their only option? Maybe back in the 80s that was true. Maybe even the early 90s it was true that, customers didn't have credit, they didn't have opportunities, and maybe we were the only game in town. Maybe there was one competitor of ours in town. But I think in today's world, we might agree that there are other options other than just Magic Rent to Own or whatever your store name is. And those options, as we know, right? I think most of us know, almost every furniture store, every electronics store, every appliance store offers some form of rent to own through virtual rent to own companies. So anywhere I go, whether it's Best Buy or Ashley Home Store or most other related stores, have a rent to own option. We also have buy now, pay later options where I can even buy my groceries with a payment plan. And there's probably others that you all would have thought of that I didn't have on this slide. But virtually every retailer is a competitor in today's world. And the thing I think we would all agree as consumers ourselves, we want to deal with people we like. Well, our customers are no different than us. They want to deal with people they like and people that take care of them, people that treat them as valued customers. So they may use your service in the short term out of need. So for example, my refrigerator goes out, I have an emergency, I've heard of this Magic Rent to Own place. I'm going to call them, they're going to bring me a refrigerator. But if I don't have a good experience with them, that relationship doesn't have to last for more than a week or two, right? Because I can rent the refrigerator and then return it if I don't like the company I'm dealing with. But we want them for the long term. So how do we do that? And my goal and what I try to train people on is I want to treat them the same way Chick-fil-A treats their customers. I want to treat our customers the same way Nordstrom treats their customers, where our customer feels just as special as anyone feels walking into those companies. So first, before we get into the how, right? Because we're here to talk about how do we keep these customers? How do we make it important? I want to kind of nail this message home by talking about the math a little bit. So let's just assume that I have 500 active customers in my store. And if I look back over the past 3 years, I find that during that 3 years, I've dealt with a total of just under 1,700, so 1,667. If I have 500 active customers, that means my retention rate is 30%. And what I'm doing with that math there is I'm just saying I have 500 current customers. I have 1,667 customers that I've dealt with over a 3 year period, and that's 30%, 500 divided by 1,667. It's a kind of a calculation that customer retention rate, this is what we call our 3-year customer retention rate that Trent Egan introduced us to probably 10 years ago now in a presentation he did. But we've used it very, very well, I think, and we've fought hard to increase that retention rate over the years. And what we like to look at is what do we do if I can improve that rate? So if I go from that 30% rate and I improve that to just 35% by working harder at the things we're going to talk about in a few minutes to keep customers, that's 83 extra customers. Now I have a total of 583 customers. And using our, average revenue per customer, that's $215,000. So just by retaining 5% more of my 3-year customer base, I've increased my revenues by $215,000. And again, using a little more math, if I increase that to 40%, I now have 167 extra customers. So by increasing from 30% to 40%, I've now added a total of $430,000 in revenues to my top line. And one more math slide. So if I think about both sides of that equation, so I say, all right, the fact is I'm taking care of my customers better. Again, we're going to talk about how in a few minutes. Taking care of my customers better. I'm doing a better job of retaining customers. They're probably spreading that word. I'm doing a better job also of focusing on sales so that over a 3-year period now, instead of dealing with 1,667 customers, I've now improved that to where my 3-year customer count was 2,000 customers over a 3-year period. So I did a better job of selling. I did a better job of retaining. That's to 40%. If I take 2,000 customers times 40%, that's 800 customers total. So if you remember, I started out with 500 customers, but just by mostly improving my retention rate, which will lead to more customers as a base customer count, that gets me to 800 customers. And in our math, with our average customers, dollar per customer, that's a $2 million store. Excuse me. But the question is, how do I keep those customers, right? So it's easy to talk about the fact that I would like to keep those customers, but how do I make that happen? And some of the ideas that I thought of for keeping them is, I think I missed a slide there. Yeah, how do we keep them? So we're not going to talk a lot about sales, but I did want to mention one thing about friction at the time of rental. It's something that, Mike Tissot has mentioned a few times, and it's really been on my mind in terms of how do we make this happen where we don't stand in the way of rentals. And this could be for new customers. It could be for past customers who are renting again. And the way I think about new customers is, you know, think about our competition where someone can go online and rent pretty much whatever they want with the push of a button. I know most of us don't want to be that freewheeling, I guess, what you would say. In other words, I still want to check some information, right? But how quickly can we do that? How can we reduce the friction enough so that the customer doesn't think of it as such a pain to get approved by us, or we're not making them wait for days for approval. We're not making them jump through hoops. We're trying to make it as quick and painless as possible to get approved, so to speak. And are we even calling it approved, or are we just saying we have this rental order, and are we minimizing that as much as possible? So again, your company's going to have your policies, but if you have influence on those policies, I would urge you to try to reduce that friction as much as possible. When I think of past customers, in other words, maybe current customers who want to rent something else, or past customers who want to come back from us, I always look at it in this way. If it's a past customer who didn't steal from us, then they're probably not going to steal from us this time. If it's a current customer who wants to rent something additional, the only question mark I like to ask is, are they struggling to pay me now? So I don't care if they have one agreement or 10 agreements. If they're not struggling with payments, I'm probably going to let them rent something else from me. If they are struggling with payments, then I'm probably going to talk to them about, how we can figure this out. Does it make sense? Making sure their budget works for them, that type of thing. When we do have a new rental, making sure, again, this is a retention tactic, right? Making sure that we have an upfront contract. And what that means is making sure at the time of rental that we spend the appropriate time making sure they understand what they could pay, how they can reduce the total payment, how many weeks it's going to be, what the consequences are if they don't pay, and most importantly, please call us if you have a payment problem. We have options for you that we can discuss. You don't have to hide from us. You don't have to avoid our phone calls. We're here to help you own this product. But by all means, don't assume the customer understands the agreement. Even if they've rented before, make sure that you're going over the most important parts of the agreement clearly and concisely. Don't read the agreement to them word for word because they're going to tune out and they're not really going to hear what you're saying anyway. So getting to the actual customer retention part of this, the thing I would urge you uh, to do is just really focus on how are we keeping these customers with us? How are we keeping them loving us as their rental company, right? And of course, the big one that causes friction and drives them away is our collections practices. Many times our coworkers misunderstand the end game with what our collection practices look like. So, is our goal to collect as much money today from them at all costs? And when I say at all costs, I mean at the cost of our relationship with them. Or, as I hinted a second ago, are we trying to have an ongoing dialogue? Are we trying to build a relationship with them that involves mutual respect and providing them with options? I think it's very important to be respectful but firm when we enforce these options. So, I'm going to talk a lot more about that in a minute, so I'm not going to dive deep into it here, but having a respectful relationship with them, but once we have options and they choose the options, making sure we are firm with it and we're not constantly bending and giving in um, on that. And again, I'll talk more about that in a second. So if we're just constantly taking what they can give us each week and fighting for a few dollars more, it can definitely create an adversarial relationship, which, in my opinion, ruins the long-term potential of the customer. And it just creates a situation where they're paying as little as possible and we're trying to get as much as possible, rather than working with them to try to get them to ownership. So what we did at Magic in order to help our team identify these options is we created when we have an expired customer, we encourage our coworkers to kind of classify them as one of four types of expired customers. And to do that, sometimes it requires some more involved communication with the customer. So a number one customer is a customer who has a short-term problem. And examples of a short-term problem might be I was sick and I only received a 2-day paycheck this week instead of a 5-day paycheck because I missed a few days of work. Maybe I had a car repair and it cost me $500. So now my paycheck's going to be short because I have to take $500 out of that check to pay the car repair. There's probably 50 other examples you could come up with, but let's use those two just as a simple process to talk about this, right? So solutions for these short-term problems could be many things. And your company's going to have your policies, but I'm just going to share what we might offer. Our first offering would be, hey, I get it. You can't pay us this week. Can you pay us a double payment next week? Okay. And if they say yes, that's easy, right? But I'm going to give them three or four options. That's the first option. If they say, I don't think that'll work, well, another option I might have for you is pay me like 1.5 weeks next week, and then the following week you can make up the balance. And so in 2 weeks, we'll be all caught up and we'll be good. Um, if they still don't think they can do that, third option might be what we call free days. Some people call it deferment or calling it an extension or something like that. Um, but what it might be is free days. But with that, there's the caveat that says if we use the free days now, next week or a month from now, or even 2 or 3 months from now, I won't have that option for you at that time. So if you're sure you can't pay me the double payment or the payment and a half, then I can do free days, but that's not going to be an option down the road. And so we try and really mitigate that and say, let's save that for a real rainy day if you don't have to use it right now. And then of course the fourth option is always we can pick up the merchandise and hold it for you. We can freeze your payment and then, in a week or two when you're caught up on your other bills, we'll just bring it right back, just depending on what it is. So one of those options is going to be something that they agree to, typically, because those are all pretty good options. And then we set that up and we're good to go. The second type of expired customer, and this is the more complicated one, I would say, is someone who has a longer term problem. So a number two customer has a longer term problem. And what might be a longer term problem? Examples of a longer term problem. Well, just referring to the ones we had before, instead of being sick for a couple of days, this customer maybe lost their job. Or maybe they've been getting overtime for a long time. They're used to working 50 hours a week, and now all of a sudden their company cut them back to 40 hours a week for the foreseeable future. Well, if that's the case, that's a long-term problem because many of our customers live paycheck to paycheck, and now that paycheck is a much smaller amount. So another example would be they lost their job entirely. I think I might have mentioned that. Lost their job, cut their overtime. Could be that their car had more than a minor problem. Maybe their car is kaput and they have to buy a new car. And again, they're going to do that on payments. So now they have an $800 a month or $1,000 a month car payment. That's a brand new bill for them that obviously is going to eat into their weekly available payments to pay us. So what are the solutions? If I offer them to pay a double payment next week, they might agree to it, but that's not going to solve their problem, right? If I offer them to pay a payment and a half for the next 2 weeks, they might agree to it. It's not going to solve their problem. If I offer them free days, deferment, whatever you call it in your company, they might agree to it, but it's not going to solve their problem because they're going to have the same shortfall every single week for as long as you can see. Man, sorry about that. I have a frog in my throat. Uh, and so they have this long-term problem, and we have to really have a discussion with them to try to resolve that long-term problem. And we obviously can't buy the car for them. We can't fix their job scenario, but what we can do is help them fix their budget. So realistic solutions for this long-term problem might be more along the lines of can we downgrade your 98-inch TV to a 65-inch TV for a time frame? Can we downgrade your refrigerator from the top of the line stainless steel French door fridge to maybe a basic 18 cubic foot for a time period? And you get the idea. Maybe it is we return the non-essential items that you don't absolutely have to have, but our goal on our side of things is to definitely not pick up everything. We want to keep them with at least one item so we keep that relationship active. And we want to make sure they know that at any time they can get that stuff back and pick up right where they left off, and that they're not losing what they paid into it. We're just helping them change their budget until they get their overtime back, get their job back, pay off that car or reduce other bills, that type of thing. So our goal here is to really help them figure out their budget that helps them in all aspects of their life. Number three customer is that customer that we've all had who just really, no matter what, like they don't have a problem, a particular problem, other than they just don't want to pay us except for as little as possible each week. And this is that one that we really are going to have to kind of battle with a little bit. We're going to hopefully try and set the tone so that they understand that they can save late charges, they can save a lot of hassle by just getting on a routine schedule with us, but we may have to pick up their product and re-deliver it and do some other things And I'm not going to belabor this because this is more of a collections discussion than this number three customer than it is a customer retention situation. The one thing I would say about these number three customers is they do make up a block of our customers. And just because we struggle with customers paying us in this manner, we don't necessarily want to cut these folks off, right? Because they make up a fair chunk of our customers. Our goal here is to help educate them, help teach them to pay on time, but it's a battle. I mean, we would all agree that this customer is a battle. Now, some of these customers might be the I've paid enough customers, right? Those ones who maybe have had a long-term rental, they've paid maybe 100 weeks on a real expensive bedroom set they got, and they're just like, look, I've paid enough. I've paid you people $3,000, $4,000 for this bedroom set, and I think that's enough. And that's where, we want to try and keep that relationship alive where we can have that discussion with them about, well, the original rental agreement said it was 120 weeks and yada yada yada. But at the same time, because we want this relationship to stay alive, this is someone who has paid us a lot of money. We might give them a deal where we say, oh, well, you have paid us a lot, you've been a good customer, and you're maybe cutting them a deal to keep them as a customer. Again, within your company policies. I'm not trying to do anything outside of what your company would allow, but that's a discussion that maybe keeps them as a customer and gets them to rent that next 100-week sofa set or whatever. But the real reason I want to mention the number three customers is that we want to prevent other customers, and we'll talk more about this in a few minutes too, but other customers, in particular, those number two customers, from becoming a number three customer. And what I mean by that is remember the number two customers are those folks who have long-term problems. If we treat that like a short-term problem and we're asking for a double payment or a little more money, rather than helping them refigure their budget, they're just going to become a number three customer, right? Because if they're trying to hold on to everything they have and they're staying in their same apartment and they have the same car payment, well, something's got to give. So they're just going to be rotating between fighting us, fighting their landlord, fighting their car payment. So if we can help them, that's going to build that long-term relationship and prevent those number two customers from becoming a number three customer, which really a lot of times some of those number three customers are going to become, lost customers. And number four customer, I just want to mention, we're not going to really talk about it, is that those very, very small percentage of people who are just trying to steal from us. And of course, we do whatever we can to get that stuff back. But they're a small percent and not really a topic of this particular discussion. So besides collection issues, the next biggest issue, in my opinion, that causes us to lose customers is repair issues. So repair issues are another thing that could turn a really good customer, or at least a potentially really good customer, into a number three customer very easily. And what I mean by that is, well, first of all, at the very beginning of the relationship, if someone's renting a refurbished item from us, no matter what it is, have we done a good job of pre-checking that and making sure everything works? Or if everything doesn't work, have we done a good job of marking it and making it clear to them what doesn't work and explaining to them that we've discounted this product because this doesn't work or that doesn't work? Making sure we give, again, that upfront contract I mentioned before. If we let them know anything that's wrong ahead of time and we make it clear that we could offer you a new one or we can offer you this one at a discount, that prevents them from getting it home and then finding out why it was discounted. So is there a missing remote? Well, that's an easy fix, right? Let's get the remote or let them know the remote's on its way, that type of thing. The reclining mechanism, let's make sure that's fixed. Drawer glides don't work, let's make sure they're fixed. Is there damage to the upholstery? Well, either let's fix it or let's make sure it's marked very clearly that this is discounted for the damage. And that's why you're getting it at such a great price. Um, if something does go wrong while they're renting it, maybe it wasn't wrong at first, but something goes wrong, let's be sure to back up our promises, right? We do charge more because we allow payments, but we also charge more because we're including a bunch of services in our rental agreement. And one of them is, hey, we're going to take care of repairs, right? So number one, when something goes wrong, don't treat them as an inconvenience. Let them know that you care and you want to help. and you're going to do something as quickly as possible to resolve the problem. Again, providing them with options. Make sure they know that it's important to you. And honestly, in your mindset, when we talk about mindset again, it really is important, right? Because this is the difference between, think of how hard we work to sell to new customers. Well, fixing this customer's problem quickly and efficiently gets you a customer for life a lot of times because they're used to our competitors who do not do that. And so this is really a big differentiator between us and a lot of times our weaker competitors. And I'll use, I don't know the specific virtual companies very well, but I'm betting they don't repair product out in homes as well as we do. And a lot of our competitors locally don't repair stuff out in homes as well as we do. And I think it's one thing that gives us an advantage. If there is a wait for parts, make sure you're giving them options. Do you want to wait? I mean, if it's not an urgent thing, we'll get you the part and we'll come out and fix it as soon as we get the parts in. Or do they need a loaner or do they need a replacement? And that's something that, depending on what we have and what your company's policies are, you can offer, but giving them the options to do it. Don't make them call you for updates, right? So if I have a part on order and I told them I think it's going to be in the end of March, and I see the end of March rolling around, make sure you have a prompt on your CRM system or on your calendar or whatever you use that says, follow up on this repair, look at the part. Is it still coming in when it's scheduled or is it delayed? And call the customer ahead of time. It's amazing what communication can do to retain customers. If you're calling someone and saying, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, I noticed we were supposed to have your item repaired by the end of March. I'm seeing that the part's not going to come in now till mid-April. Do you still want to wait? Do you want us to bring you a loaner? Give them options. 9 times out of 10, they're just going to be happy you called them and that they don't have to wonder what's going on. It's just an amazing thing, this thing called communication. Um, and again, it's just that potentially great customer becomes a number three customer when they feel they're paying you what they've agreed, right? They're paying you the payment every single week, but you're not providing that service that you promised them. So why am I going to pay for a recliner that doesn't even work? And it could be anything. Why am I paying for the, PS5 that has a broken controller? Why am I paying for a dresser where the drawer glides are not working, where I can't even open my drawers properly. So moving on from repairs, another big opportunity to turn off a customer and therefore keep customers by doing it better is when they return an item. I know one thing we were shocked to find out is we did a survey years ago, and we were shocked to find out how many of our returned customers uh, didn't realize they were welcome back. So are we making it explicitly clear that when you return an item, we want you back. We want you as a return customer at some point. Most customers, as you know, return an item because they're having financial hardship, right? I should say a lot of times. I don't know if it's most, but certainly a lot of them do it because they're having financial troubles. Are we reminding them that this is part of our business? It's part of the great thing about rent to own is that if you run into a payment problem, we can pick it up and hold it for you. And when you're back on your feet financially, when things get back to normal, we want you back and we're going to bring this product or a very similar product back to you. Think about, if you were in their shoes, when you're having to return something for financial reasons, that can be pretty embarrassing. And sometimes you've seen it in play. When something's embarrassing, that can lead to anger. I'm angry that I have to return this, and that kind of makes me angry at you. Are you responding with anger or are you responding with understanding and saying, "Hey, I feel your pain. I apologize that this has to happen, but we want you to know this is part of our business model, is that we're going to bring that back and you can pick up your payments right where you left off whenever your overtime is restored or whenever you get back to work or whenever you pay off the car." Whatever the situation is, make sure they know that they're welcome back. Do they know about our reinstatement policy? As I was mentioning, many companies offer lifetime reinstatement. Do they know about your policy, whatever your company policy is? Even customers like those number three customers I mentioned who were problem payers, that's kind of the business we're in, right? Is helping them learn to budget. do they know that we want them back? And again, maybe when they come back, we do have an upfront discussion with them, part of that upfront contract that says, hey, John, you were kind of a struggle the last time. We really like you. We enjoy you. We want to help you. But we also, understand that we're here to provide a service, and our service is to help you own this product. We don't want to fight you every week. So just call us if there's a problem and we can help you. And again, it doesn't always work, but those number three customers, you can soften them up over time with that right demeanor. So another thing that we do, I think, to drive customers away, that if we did better would help us retain more customers, is providing them with what they want, right? So I'll tell you, recently we had a situation in our company where we had a bunch of iPhone 17s, but we had the standard ones. A lot of our customers were asking for the Pro Maxes, which happens to be the best-selling model. So it's not surprising that that's what our customers want, because they want what everyone else wants. And our original kind of thought process was, well, we got to get rid of these ones we have. So just tell them we can't get the other ones. And after rethinking it and talking it through as a group, we said, no, we really want to get the ones that they want, because sure, if they're in an emergency situation where they need a phone, they might rent the regular one from us for a few weeks. But then once they can get the Pro Max somewhere else, they're just going to return this, get it somewhere else, and then we're going to have a used phone and none on rental to this customer. So that's just one example. And I know phones are a touchy subject, but I'm talking about furniture selection. Don't assume the customers only have the choice of you to choose the selection you have in your store. Remember, they can go to the Ashley Home Store and rent to own anything in there. So I realize we can't have the same selection as the Ashley Home Store does in our stores, because we're typically a little smaller footprint, but trying to get them what they want, trying to get them something that will make them happy, instead of crowbarring them into what you have and thinking they're going to stick with something that they're not really that happy with. And then, of course, we had made up a list in our group that we went over the rest of the list. But that's really the discussion we had at the Trib Meeting the Mind show. I would love to hear from you if you have other things that we can kind of build on in the future. So send me an email with other ideas that you have for how we can retain customers, and we'd love to build on this at upcoming shows, whether it's RTO World or the next Meeting of the Mind show. So thanks for listening. Sorry I was choking halfway through, but appreciate you tuning in.